Okay, the next lesson is going to be finding the area of a trapezoid. It's going to be on grid paper, and it's using triangles and rectangles. They're doing this so that you decompose, so that you separate the shapes. And if you take a look at what we have at this particular point, we do have what looks to be like a rectangle, and then we also have what looks to be a triangle. So again, if I would just take a look, move them over, and keep them separated, but that's what's going to make up our trapezoid. But what we need to realize with a trapezoid, and it's really important, what makes a trapezoid a trapezoid? What is so special? And what's special about a trapezoid is it has one pair of parallel sides. That's going to be important when we start talking about the formula. But for right now, what makes a trapezoid a trapezoid? One pair of sides that happen to be parallel. But for this particular problem, we're going to look at each section on its own. And they don't give you any measurements, so you have to find that out on your own. And be careful when you measure. For instance, when we're looking at our rectangle, if I'm going to look at this measure, some people count the lines, like they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. They'll do something like that. That is incorrect, okay? That is not the correct way to measure. You're really measuring the line in between. And again, important to note, they're telling you that 1 unit is just from here to here. So I can look and I can say that this is 1, 2, 3. That happens to be 3. I'll use U for units. And so then I know that this is 3 units. And then I can look at the other side, and it's 1, 2, 3. It's 4 units. So I will label this as 4 units. Then I'm going to look at my triangle. We said in order to find the area of a triangle, you must have an altitude, a height, and that must meet at a right angle. They do not have a right angle marking here. However, because it is on grid paper, we know that that is going to be a 90-degree angle. So the measures we need would be 1, 2, 3. We've got 3 units here, so we would have our 3 units. And then our altitude is going to be right here because that's where it meets, the two meet at a right angle. And this is, of course, 1, 2, 3, 4, just like we had at the top. And so we have our 4 units. So now let's find our area. Easy enough to do with our rectangle. We have our length times our width, so we have 4 units times 3 units, 4 units times 3 units, which will give us our 12 units squared. And then the area of the triangle. We know we take the 2 measures that meet at the 90-degree angle where they're perpendicular. We multiply them, 4 times 3. That gives us 12, but now we know we need to cut it in half, because if we had the whole thing, it would be 12, but because it is a triangle, we cut it in half, and so then the area of this particular triangle would be 6 units squared. We want the total, so it would be 12 units squared plus 6 units squared, which would end up giving us 18 units squared, and that would be our answer. To fill in the blanks, the area of your rectangle, obviously the 12, then we have our triangle, 6, and the total would be our 18. And that's what we would do to get the area on grid paper. Now, the difference is, if you cannot do it on grid paper, I don't want the students to have to memorize a formula, but they can ask themselves, what makes a trapezoid a trapezoid? And it is indeed the fact that it has 1 pair of sides that are going to be parallel. We're going to take those measures. We've got 8 yards, and we're going to add 9 yards to that, and we end up with 27 yards. That would be the sum of the 2 sides that are parallel. We're going to take those 27 yards, and then we are going to multiply it by the height, the altitude, which is the line that is meeting at a right angle on one of our parallel sides. So then we're going to go ahead And we're going to take the sum of our two parallel sides, and we are going to multiply it times 8. So we will multiply that by 8, and we are going to end up with 216, and that would be 216 yards. And because we are going to make sure that we have our units, it's going to be yards to the second power. This is not to the second power because we are just adding linear measures. This is just yards and yards. But now in this case, it's going to be 27 yards by 8 yards, and we are going to get 216 yards squared. What we need to do with the trapezoid, we will divide this by 2. So we're going to divide that product by 2, and we would end up with 108 yards squared. And that would be your answer. Now going back to what we did previously, if we did the same thing with this particular problem, you could take a look at the sides that are parallel, which happen to be the 3, and then this side would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We could take 3 units plus, we said 6 units, and that would give us 9 units squared. Excuse me, just 9 units. If we take our 9 units and we multiply it by the altitude, which happened to be 1, 2, 3, 4, because that was our right angle, we would then multiply it by the 4 units. We would end up with 36 units squared. Divide that by 2, which would end up leaving us with our 18 units squared. So, works all the time. Much easier if you do it on grid paper, but if you have a problem like this where you really do not know the lengths of some of your parts, then you would be better off using the formula. And that is it.